Hello everyone, and thanks for joining us for our second video within this mini-series with Saffrey's discussing valuations within the recruitment sector. Today we're going to be discussing what factors should recruitment owners consider that can affect the multiple achieved and the total enterprise and then equity valuation that we touched upon in our last video. The point that we're going to discuss today is the split between contract and perm and what effect that has on the multiple achieved. Seb, do you want to give me your insight into what you're typically seeing and the effect that the contract perm split can have on multiples achieved?
Yeah, sure. Good to be back. I think one thing I'll just touch on before we get into that contract versus perm is it can be really easy for business owners to sometimes go down that track of fixating on multiples. And what we would typically say to our clients is that actually the thing in your control here is the underlying earnings, because you've got multiple multiplies the earnings. So that's the focus. But I think it's a really interesting point in this space around contract versus perm, and is one better than the other? Will one get a higher multiple than the other? It's always an interesting area to look into. I think what we see is typically a contract business has more stable cash flows, or at least more predictable cash flows. And generally what we see is that buyers value predictability in cash flows because it's more likely to continue. Also, contract businesses, you often have strong relationships with the underlying customers. Yeah. So again, that's generally a strong business. The contract business can be a strong business by virtue of the fact it has strong customer relationships. Perm businesses aren't necessarily going to trade at a discount as a result of that, but you need to have a lot better track record and be able to demonstrate that recurrence of revenue or reoccurrence of revenue, and have a strong team, because things like the concentration of fees by consultant can become a really interesting thing to look at in perm businesses. And again, these are risk areas that a buyer might think, actually, this might be an area that's a little bit too risky for me because we don't have that guarantee on future cash flows. There's key person risk. I think the most important thing is being really good at whichever one you do, or if you're doing both, having a reason for doing both and being good at both. I think naturally being a good contract business can lead to contract to perm, so we often see businesses develop that from a strong base. Equally strong perm businesses, because perm tends to do well in good times, might look at bolting on that contract arm so that you smooth out the trading cycle. Contract can be great for cash flow, so that's what we see businesses trying to build out. But the key for me, and that we see with our clients, is that you need to be good at both. You can't just do one because you think it's going to improve your valuation.
No,
I don't know what you see.
I definitely echo your comments, and going back to what you said with regards to those permanent agencies. I guess when we're looking at permanent businesses, we sort of look at the number of billers that they have, and the more billers they have, and when they really get to that critical mass, that's when a buyer is assured that that business is going to continue post-sale. And what you said there, any buyer is looking at risk when assessing the transaction, and if as a seller you can reduce that risk, that is going to make you more attractive to any buyer.
Yeah, I completely agree, and I think that's the key, is that critical mass. And also perm consultants can take a bit of time to get going, to build the relationships, to build out a book of individuals that might be moving around in the space and to really know their sector. And so having a bigger number means that you can withstand losses better and you can bring new people through the team. With contract businesses, if you've got a really good book, yes, the relationship's really important with the consultant, but you might be able to replace a consultant and continue the same book. Yeah. It's a lot harder with perm.
No, for sure. I guess just to give you an insight into what we're seeing in the market at the moment from the buyers that we're working with, I would say there is certainly a preference to look at those contract staffing agencies. As you touched upon, being able to foresee what the earnings would look like with these contractors. They're out with clients for maybe 6 months, even 12 months or longer. In some instances, that is great visibility of future earnings, which I guess ties back to what you were saying about valuations in the first video with regards to what buyers look at.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's the key, is at the moment, it's no secret, we live in uncertain times. Contract books generally do better in uncertain times, so I'm not surprised to hear that's what buyers are looking for.
Thank you for joining us for this mini-series discussing valuations within the recruitment and staffing sector. If you have any additional questions, please feel free to reach out to either Seb or myself direct. Our details can be found in the description below.